I got DDP by accident. I'm just joking, guys. UFC 319 is coming up this weekend, and the main event is the long-awaited fight between DDP and Khamzat Chimaev. And it's honestly the most hyped matchup of the year in my opinion. I'm more excited for this than I was for Topuria versus Charles. Will Khamzat crack DDP's plot armor? That's what we're gonna get to the bottom of in this video, and you already know how it go. Let's go over the strengths and weaknesses for each fighter. Starting with the champion, DDP. His biggest strength is of course his plot armor, followed by his toon force, but all jokes aside, he's a very well-rounded fighter, he's very good everywhere. But the thing that stands out extra much is of course his very unorthodox fighting style. He doesn't really have a rhythm to his fighting. But his blitzes are also a very big part of his stand-up game. I think the most underrated part of his striking though is his kicks. They're very good, especially his left kick. He was stinging Adesanya a ton with that in their fight, but besides that, he's also a very dangerous fighter on the ground. He has very nasty ground and pound, but overall, he also keeps a very high pace. He still has steam left in the later rounds, even though it doesn't really look like that. He still has that thud on his punches, you know? And you can't talk about DDP's strengths without bringing up his sheer juicy girth. Pause, I'm talking about DDP, not DDP. But all jokes aside, he's built like an absolute tank. He's insanely strong, very durable as well. But let's move on to his weaknesses. He's quite hittable, keeps his hands very high, which isn't really a bad defense for him, but it does make him very open for body shots. And he also sometimes telegraphs a lot of his attacks. And he's sometimes very open when throwing punches and after throwing punches, which makes him very easy to counter. Now when it comes to Khamzat, his biggest strength is of course his wrestling. He has insanely fast takedowns, the fastest takedowns I've ever seen. He gets really low on them as well. And he's also very good while on the ground. He has really good scrambles and back takes. The guy was literally spinning around on Kevin Holland. I mean, who does that to Kevin Holland? But he's also very strong. Take a look at the Whittaker fight, where he literally broke his teeth or jaw, I think it was his teeth. And I know it was due to a pre-existing condition, but still you have to be extremely strong in order to do something like that. And he also just keeps an insane pace in the first round. He's probably the most dangerous first round fighter of all time. Now on the feet, he is a pretty mid striker, but he does have some weapons. First of all, he's very powerful, which always helps. He knocked out the GOAT, GM3 in the first round, and he also has a pretty decent jab on him. Now he does have one massive weakness, and that is of course his cardio. After round 1, there's just a gigantic decline in activity, and I don't even know if it's due to bad cardio necessarily. It's most likely due to the fact that he goes out 100% in the first round, in my opinion, which is a very high risk, high reward style. Now let's go over the win conditions for each fighter, starting with DDP. DDP's way to victory in this fight is of course to survive the first round, and that's very that's easier said than done, to say the least. But the advice I would give him is try not to get backed up. Khamzat wants to back you up close to the cage so he can't sprawl, and I heard some people suggesting that Dricus should shoot first, and it would be hilarious if he did. But I can actually see the argument for it. You know, he gets to fight to the ground on his terms. But on the other hand, I could also see Khamzat maybe just getting into a position where he can darce DDP. But let's just say he survives the early onslaught in the first round. And if he does, he's gonna be looking to keep the fight standing and wear down on Khamzat with his superior striking and cardio, and eventually finish him. Now Khamzat on the other hand is of course gonna want to take down DDP early in the fight, take his back and submit him. I know Habib said Khamzat should try to strike with DDP, and I honestly think that's just terrible advice in my opinion. A lot of people are also suggesting that he should take a less aggressive approach, try to take it slow, you know, and easy, cruise away with a decision, and that's just not good advice, and I'm completely against it. What makes Khamzat so special is how dangerous he is in the first round, how dangerous his first sprint is, and if he stands up with DDP like halfway through the first round, before he shoots a takedown, if he does some jogging before he sprints, you know what I'm saying, he might not be able to sprint at full capacity. And if he isn't able to sprint at full capacity, his opponent has a way better chance of surviving. So you probably get what I'm saying right now, but going all out from the first round is his sauce. That's what what he's best at, and he's honestly the best in the world at just that. So him completely changing his way of fighting to a style that doesn't even really favor his natural attributes is not gonna favor him in this matchup. And let's be real, he's not outstriking DDP on the feet, and he's not beating DDP by decision either. His cardio just won't hold up in a 5-rounder, so if I'm Khamzat, I'm betting it all on the first round. But how do I see this fight going? Well, I see DDP maybe dropping a piano on Khamzat, maybe drawing a hole in the octagon canvas, which Khamzat eventually falls into. But honestly, I don't think this fight will be close at all. It's a very hard fight to predict, but hear me out. It all comes down to the first round. Either Khamzat dominates DDP and subs him in the first, or DDP survives the first, turns it into a scrap where he'll have a clear advantage, and eventually finish Khamzat later in the fight. Now I know Khamzat has been working a lot on his cardio for this camp, but I doubt his cardio is going to be improved to an amount where it's actually going to make a difference in the fight. As I said before, he fights at such a high pace that it's simply too exhausting for him. So the big question in this fight is not if DDP can defend the takedowns in the first round, but can DDP survive on the ground in the first round? Bars, by the way. To answer that, you have to look at Khamzat's former fights, specifically the Whittaker fight and the Usman fight. And people forget, man, Whittaker was doing a really good job defending on the ground, and honestly, if Whittaker didn't have that pre-existing condition, I don't think Khamzat would have finished him with that submission. Specifically in that moment, I specifically mean in that moment. Maybe he would have gotten it later in the round, but in that moment, Khamzat did not have both hooks in, so realistically speaking, Whittaker should have been able to escape that if it wasn't for his teeth breaking due to a pre-existing condition. Now Usman was someone who was able to survive the first round, and he took that fight on like 8 days notice up a weight class, coming off 2 back-to-back L's to Leon Edwards. And I know it's Usman, he's a very good grappler, but the point is, the outside factors were not in his favor in that fight. Now I understand Usman and Whittaker are different from DDP in some ways. I would honestly say they both are maybe better than DDP on a technical level when it comes to defensive grappling. However, I think DDP is clearly stronger than the both of them. You can take the Whittaker fight for example, where Whittaker took down DDP and DDP got back up with ease. And he also took down Whittaker on the ground in that fight, and on the ground, Whittaker really didn't have that much for him at all, and if DDP would have had more time in that round, Whittaker would have been in serious trouble. Another thing DDP has going for him is the fact that he is a pressure fighter, and in this fight, he is going to want to stay off the fence so he can sprawl the takedown. And I also think Khamzat might have trouble taking down someone who's constantly looking to pressure him on the feet. Now I know, people are going to bring up the Brunson fight, and that maybe wasn't his best showcase of grappling. It looked like they were fighting underwater. However, that fight took place over 2 years ago, and I'm sure DDP has improved a lot since then, and we know he has improved. I mean, take a look at the way he fights now, he's way better. And honestly, I never predict fights like this, but let's be real, if it's anyone who's gonna survive the first round against Khamzat, it's Dricus, man. The plot armor is real, so I will be going with DDP by whatever works. I'm joking, but I think the first round is gonna be tough, but I think he'll survive. Then in the second round, I think it's gonna turn into a scrap where the both of them are gonna be pretty tired. But I think that we're maybe gonna see DDP maybe stuff a takedown from Khamzat, and that's when we're gonna know. Hold on now, tide is turning, okay? And I think in the third round, DDP's gonna be putting that mustard on him, and I think he'll TKO Khamzat in that round. So in short, I'm going with DDP by TKO in the third round. But that said, I think that's it for today, guys. Check out my last video where I talked about Ilya Topuria and how he's not ducking Arman Saryukin. But anyways, thanks for watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Am I just a DDP glacier, or do you agree with my prediction? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and also don't forget to share this to every single Khamzat Chimaev fan you know. And I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye!